I don't know exactly when I first heard about the road. Maybe it was at the diner, over coffee and pancakes, or maybe it was at the general store, where old men with leathery skin chew tobacco and talk about the past like it still belongs to them. Either way, if you live in Dunridge long enough, you'll hear about the road that wasn't there. Dunridge, Kentucky, is the kind of town where the biggest event of the year is the Fall Festival, where folks set up booths selling homemade jam and wood carvings, and where kids run wild while their parents sit on the courthouse lawn listening to bluegrass music. It's quiet, old-fashioned, the kind of place where you know everybody's name, and everybody knows your business. The first time I saw the road was in late September, right after a big storm rolled through. I was driving out past Miller's Creek, heading toward Route 16, when I saw it, a narrow strip of asphalt veering off from the main road, cutting through a stretch of woods that, as far as I knew, had always been untouched. It wasn't there before, I was sure of that. The trees looked wrong, like they had been pushed aside, bent in ways nature wouldn't allow. There were no signs, no mile markers, no indication that the road should exist. But it did. I slowed down, gripping the wheel a little tighter. The road looked old, cracked, as if it had been there for years, yet I knew that was impossible. I pulled over onto the shoulder and sat there, staring at it. The wind rustled through the trees, and for a moment, everything felt too still. Then, in the silence, I heard something, a whisper, maybe just the wind through the leaves, but it almost sounded like my name. That was the moment I should have turned around. But I didn't. I should have turned back. Looking back, I know that now. But that's the thing about hindsight. It's clear as day when you're no longer in the moment. At that time, sitting behind the wheel of my old Chevy, I didn't feel scared. Not yet. Just curious. The road shouldn't have been there. I had driven County Road 47 for years, knew every bend, and dip like the back of my hand. But that night, after dropping off some supplies for my uncle in town, I spotted a side road I'd never seen before. It cut off to the right, just past Miller's old barn, and curved into the dense pine woods. No sign, no markings, just a strip of cracked asphalt stretching into the trees. I slowed down. Maybe it was a new road the county put in? But that made no sense. Why pave a road to nowhere? And why had I never seen it before? For a moment, I hesitated. The smart thing to do would have been to keep driving home, forget about it. But something about that road nagged at me, like an itch in the back of my mind. I turned the wheel. The tires crunched against loose gravel as I eased onto the road. My headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating a narrow stretch of pavement lined with towering pines. The further I went, the more the road seemed wrong. The trees pressed in too close, their gnarled branches forming a canopy overhead, blocking out the sky. The pavement, though cracked and old-looking, had no potholes, nowhere from rain or passing cars. It was like it had been abandoned years ago, yet never aged. A chill crept up my spine. The temperature seemed to drop. I glanced at the clock on the dash. 10:23 p.m. Only a few minutes had passed since I'd turned, but it felt like longer. Then my radio crackled. At first, I thought it was just static. Small towns like mine don't get the best reception in the middle of nowhere. But underneath the static, I swore I heard something. A voice. "Don't there, turn." I froze. The words were faint, distant, like someone whispering through the static. I adjusted the dial, but the sound vanished, replaced by the usual white noise. I exhaled sharply, shaking my head. Just interference, I told myself. But my hands were gripping the wheel tighter than before. Then I saw it. A figure. Standing just at the edge of my headlights. I slammed on the brakes. My heart pounded as I leaned forward, squinting through the windshield. The figure stood in the middle of the road, motionless. A man, at least I thought it was a man. His clothes were old, tattered. His face was shadowed, obscured by the darkness. I fumbled for the high beams. The moment the light hit him, my stomach dropped. His face was wrong. It wasn't just shadowed. It was blurred, like a photograph smeared by rain. His features shifted, unfocused, as if my eyes couldn't quite process them. And his posture, stiff, unnatural, made every instinct in my body scream at me to leave. Then he took a step forward. I didn't wait to see what would happen next. I threw the truck into reverse, tires screeching as I backed away. Fast. My hands trembled on the wheel, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The headlights flickered, and then he was gone. Just vanished. Like he'd never been there at all. I slammed the brakes again, my chest rising and falling with quick, panicked breaths. My eyes darted around the road, searching for any sign of movement. But the road was empty, silent. I needed to get out of there. Shifting the truck into drive, I pressed down on the gas, determined to turn back onto County Road 47 and forget this whole damn thing ever happened. But as I sped forward, my headlights hit something that turned my blood to ice. A road sign. Rusted, half covered in vines. I had just enough time to read the words before I drove past it. No return. And then just like that, the road behind me was gone. Not blocked. Not overgrown. Just gone. No tire tracks. No turnoff. Just an endless stretch of unfamiliar road ahead, winding deeper into the woods. My hands shook as I gripped the wheel. My pulse pounded in my ears. The road that wasn't there had just taken me with it. I gripped the wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. My breath was coming in short, panicked bursts. The road behind me gone. No turnoff. No sign I had ever left County Road 47. But I had. I knew I had. The road stretched ahead, winding deeper into the trees, its cracked asphalt looking ancient, untouched. My headlights barely cut through the darkness now. It was thick, heavy, like the night itself had weight. I swallowed hard and forced myself to take a slow breath. Panicking wasn't going to help. I just had to keep driving. Maybe the road would loop back around. Maybe I'd find a driveway, a clearing, something. I pressed the gas, my truck rolling forward at a steady pace. The silence was deafening. No crickets, no rustling leaves, nothing. The only sound was the hum of my engine and the crunch of my tires against the old pavement. Then my headlights flickered. For a brief second, everything plunged into darkness. My stomach dropped, and my hands tightened on the wheel. Then the lights came back on, dimmer this time, weaker. That's when I saw it. The same road sign. No return. I slammed the brakes. My heart hammered against my ribs. No, that wasn't possible. I had passed that sign already. I had kept driving forward. But here it was. The exact same rusted sign, half covered in vines, leaning at the same crooked angle. I wasn't going forward. I was going in circles. A cold sweat broke out on my neck. I put the truck in reverse, slamming my foot down on the gas. The engine roared as I sped backward, trying to force my way back to County Road 47. The headlights flickered again. The road behind me stretched on. It didn't matter how far I went. There was no end, no intersection, no sign of where I had come from. I stopped again, gripping the wheel so hard my fingers hurt. I could feel my pulse in my throat. This wasn't possible. This road didn't exist. Then, something new appeared in the distance. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me, but as I squinted through the dim headlights, I saw it clearly. A house. Not just any house. A small, two-story farmhouse with a sagging porch, its paint peeling, its windows dark. It sat just off the side of the road, partially hidden by the trees. And I knew that house. It had belonged to the Langley family, but it had burned down 20 years ago. A memory hit me like a punch to the gut. I was just a kid when it happened. The fire had spread fast, swallowing the whole house in minutes. Mr. and Mrs. Langley had barely made it out alive. Their son, Jesse, hadn't been so lucky. So, why was the house standing there now? I swallowed hard. Every instinct in my body told me to drive past it. Keep going. Don't stop. But then I saw something in the upstairs window. A figure, standing perfectly still, watching me. My body locked up. My fingers twitched on the wheel. The figure didn't move, didn't shift. It just stood there, half hidden behind the dirty glass. I couldn't see a face. Just a silhouette. A child-sized silhouette. I reached for the gear shift, ready to gun it. But before I could, my radio crackled again. Help. The word was barely a whisper through the static, but I heard it.
Clear as day.
I froze. I didn't want to go in that house. Everything in me screamed, not to. But what if someone was in there? What if someone really did need help? I clenched my teeth, forcing myself to breathe. Then, before I could talk myself out of it, I killed the engine, grabbed the flashlight from my glove box, and opened the door. The second my boots hit the pavement, the silence pressed in harder. The air was thick, suffocating. My skin prickled as I took a slow step toward the house. The wooden porch groaned under my weight. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness, sweeping across the rotting planks, the broken front door hanging slightly open. Inside, the air smelled like smoke, like burnt wood and something else, something sour, something old. I hesitated at the doorway. "Hello?" My voice barely echoed. No answer. Just the creaking of the house settling. I stepped inside. Dust swirled in the beam of my flashlight. The living room was just as I remembered from when I was a kid. Same old furniture, same pictures on the walls. Like nothing had changed. Except it should have been ash. I swallowed hard and moved deeper inside. The floorboards groaned under my weight. My flashlight flickered. Then I heard it. A soft creak from upstairs. Like a footstep. My breath caught in my throat. I turned toward the staircase. "Help." The voice came from the second floor. I fought the urge to turn and run. I took a step onto the stairs. Then another. The air grew heavier with each step. By the time I reached the top, my pulse was hammering. The hallway stretched before me, lined with closed doors. But only one door was open. Jesse Langley's room. The burned boy. I forced myself forward, my fingers trembling as I pushed the door open wider. The flashlight beam swept across the small room. A bed, neatly made. A wooden toy chest. A rocking chair, still swaying slightly, as if someone had just left it. And then, the closet door creaked open. I turned my flashlight toward it. My throat tightened. There, standing in the doorway, was a small figure. Not a shadow. Not a trick of the light.
A boy.
His skin was pale, almost gray. His eyes were hollow, dark pits staring straight at me. His clothes were scorched, tattered. Jesse Langley. My breath hitched. Then he moved. Not walked. Not stepped. Glided. Straight toward me. The flashlight flickered again. My chest clenched as I stumbled backward. My foot caught on the rug, and I went down hard, my back slamming against the wooden floor. Jesse loomed over me now, his hollow eyes locked onto mine. Then, in a whisper-soft voice, he spoke. "You shouldn't be here." The flashlight went out, and the house swallowed me whole. Everything went black. For a moment, I thought I had gone blind. The darkness was absolute, thick, suffocating. My breath came in shallow gasps as I scrambled backward, my hands scraping against the splintered floorboards. Then, slowly, a flickering glow filled the room. Not from my flashlight, it was still dead in my grip. The light came from the walls. The wooden planks were burning, but there was no heat, no smoke, just eerie, silent flames crawling along the walls, licking at the ceiling like ghosts of a fire long past. The room shimmered, distorting like a mirage. And Jesse Langley was still standing over me. His hollow eyes bore into mine, unblinking. His mouth moved, but his voice was layered, like multiple whispers speaking at once. "You shouldn't be here." My heart pounded. I forced myself to my feet, my legs shaking beneath me. I didn't mean to," I stammered. "I don't even know how I got here." Jesse tilted his head. The flames flickered, and for a brief second, I saw something else behind him, a dark, gaping doorway where the closet had been. Something stirred inside it. Something bigger than Jesse. My stomach twisted. I took a step back. "I just want to leave," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Jesse blinked.
Slowly.
Then, in that same layered voice, he said, "There's only one way out." I swallowed hard. "Which way?" He lifted one pale, scorched hand and pointed to the window. Outside, the road stretched into the darkness, endless, empty. No return, Jesse murmured. My chest tightened. I didn't have time to ask what he meant, because the thing in the closet moved. A slow, scraping sound, like claws dragging against wood. Then a breath. A deep, rattling inhale that filled the room with a rotten, burning stench. Jesse's expression didn't change, but he took a step back, disappearing into the flickering shadows. The closet door creaked open wider, and I ran. I didn't think, didn't look back. I bolted down the hallway, my boots slamming against the floorboards. The walls burned around me, shifting, warping, but I didn't stop. I hit the stairs, taking them two at a time. The house groaned like it was alive, the wood twisting under my feet. My lungs burned, my legs ached, but I didn't slow down. I reached the front door and nearly ripped it off its hinges as I stumbled outside. The night air hit me like a slap. Cold, damp. The house behind me was silent again. No fire. No light. Just an empty, decaying shell. I turned toward my truck.
And stopped.
The road was gone. Not just the intersection. Not just the turnoff. Everything. The house sat in an endless black void. The trees, the ground, the sky, everything beyond the porch had vanished. I staggered backward. My breath came in panic gasps.
No. No, no, no.
I had left. I had made it out. But I was still trapped. A whisper brushed against my ear. You took the wrong road. I spun around. Jesse was standing on the porch, his hollow eyes glowing faintly in the dark. There's only one way back, he murmured. I swallowed hard. My fingers curled into fists. Tell me, I said. He didn't answer. Instead, he stepped forward, reaching into his pocket. And he pulled out a matchbook. A small, blackened matchbook with one match left inside. The sight of it sent a chill down my spine. Jesse held it out to me. Burn it, he whispered. My hands shook as I took it from him. Burn what? I asked. But deep down, I already knew. Jesse didn't answer. He simply pointed back at the house. The Langley house. I took a shaky breath. My pulse pounded in my ears. It wasn't real. It wasn't supposed to be here. Neither was I. I struck the match. The tiny flame flickered in the darkness, casting long shadows across the porch. I hesitated only a second, then threw it inside. The moment the flame touched the floor, the house ignited. But this time it was real. Heat blasted against my face as the fire roared to life, consuming the walls, the porch, the windows. The flames climbed high, swallowing everything in their path. The ground trembled. The air filled with crackling, snapping wood. And then, everything collapsed. The house imploded, vanishing into the flames. And just like that, I was standing on County Road 47. My truck was parked on the side of the road. The old barn stood where it always had. The stars twinkled above. No mysterious road. No Langley house. Just the world as it should be. I sucked in a shaky breath. My hands were still trembling. My skin still smelled like smoke. I climbed into my truck, my body heavy with exhaustion. As I turned the key in the ignition, my headlights illuminated the road ahead. And for just a split second, I saw Jesse Langley standing at the tree line, watching. Then he was gone. I didn't look back. I drove home. And I never took a wrong turn again.